Want to share, Meher? Oh.
Hi, everybody. Jay Baba.
Okay, Baba, before we start, and Diane and Terry might not join us, but I want to give a birthday shout out to Terry. She is
Woo!
celebrating a big birthday, so just in case she doesn't join and sees it on YouTube later, happy birthday, Terry. We love you.
We
Hope you're
already sang to her.
having a great day. Aw, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Hope you're celebrating and having the best birthday. And over to you, Margie.
Oh, well, that's so sweet. Well, happy birthday, Terry. And then hi, everybody. Jay Baba. I hope everybody's doing well this week. I'm actually really excited about this topic because it's kind of one that I've been wanting to do for a while, but I was like I felt like very vulnerable. And so I was a little shy to do it. But so I want to talk about shame and the sort of the weird relationship that it plays on the spiritual path, because we are kind of hold ourselves to a pretty high standard. And Baba, I mean, he gives us the discourses and things like that, where he makes it's like all the information is there, but sometimes we kind of forget that we're human, and we have these beautiful examples like the Mandali. And so I know for me, I'm like, oh, why can't I just get there? And so I guess let's read the email, but the first two quotes of the email, for me, they're so important because when I get to those moments, I know that it's the mind, because ultimately it's our journey to go through that process of, I mean, it's just like an ego death. Every time that you have to let go of a version that you're connected to Baba, or that this ideal that you have about what being spiritual is or what being good is, he has to destroy it. And I love the first two quotes because it's like, we have nothing to worry about. He loves us and we're all destined for that goal no matter what. So, can I get somebody to read the email? Oh, Peter, do you mind making me a host unless you have it up?
Okay. Go for it. I mean, you a co-host.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh no, what's happening? Why is my...
If not, I could get it quickly here. I'll just be in there so if you can't.
Oh, hold on 1 second. I just have to allow screen recording. Okay. Cool. I just updated my computer settings, so it went back to factory. Okay. So who wants to read it tonight? Any hands? Any takers? Anyone? No? Can I call on somebody? Let's go. I'm gonna say Tony.
Somehow I knew. I don't know how.
You know what it was? You smiled, and then you really just locked yourself in.
Well, Jay Baba all. I wanted to start with these two quotes from Baba to set the stage for this topic. Quote, "There is no creature which is not destined for the supreme goal, as there is no river which is not winding its way towards the sea." Quote, "Why worry? I love you as you are." I wanted to start off with these quotes because I believe so much shame in us comes when we forget these two truths. Baba loves us for exactly who we are, all of perfections and shortcomings included. Shame is a very strange emotion that bubbles up in a spiritual life. In some ways, it can subtly guide you if you don't attend to it. But it can also cripple you entirely. I feel many of us can get stuck on the idea of doing what is right or doing what we should, rather than what our hearts are longing for. Many times what the heart craves is not what is right or the norm. Has following your heart ever led you astray? Have you done something that felt like the bad thing to do, but ended up working out for your divine benefit? We often attribute the voice of our inner critic to Baba, which can cause us to forget that he loves us unconditionally. It is very hard for the mind to accept him as both all-accepting, but also that fatherly voice pushing us to do better. I know for myself, I swing on the pendulum of Baba loves me so much, and Baba must be so disappointed in me. Is this something you have had a similar struggle with? Is it possible that he does play both roles, but perfectly? After all, he is everything. So isn't that disappointment an aspect of him? Or do you think that perhaps the disappointment is a complete facet of the mind? I love these two quotes because they really do take the power away from that voice of criticism. As lovers of Baba, we often feel a longing and pressure to do everything we can to be close to him. This is wonderful, but when we inevitably fumble, we can be so hard on ourselves, forgetting that even that is his wish. The first quote in particular is so helpful because sometimes I find myself thinking about how badly I've screwed up, and now I won't ever get to him. It is a beautiful reminder that the perfection we seek is waiting for us, just in his timing and grace. How do you manage the difficult balance of always doing your best, but not letting shame and criticism run your inner world? Is it possible to do your best and it not be what we think is right, but rather what he has planned? I can't wait to hear all of your experiences. And his love, Margi and Peter.
Thank you, Tony. And I so apologize. Proofreading is probably my it's the skill I'm lacking most in life. So when I send out these emails and you guys read them.
It's all good. It's all good. And proofreading was my job, proofreading, editing, and all that.
Okay,
so once I got that, I was able to just say, well, clearly it's unconditional love, and it was great. It was fun.
No, I appreciate the patience with me. Well, yeah. So I don't know. Those two quotes just stuck out to me so much because I was just feeling wretched. I'm like, oh man, I wish I could do better. But then this aspect of all of these, faults that we think we have and the mess ups often lead us to this big lesson, a bigger lesson that Bob was trying to give us. And so I just want to open the floor with that and kind of see what your experience of shame is and how you combat that, or maybe how it's even benefited being closer to him. Does anybody want to venture out?
I'll start.
Okay.
Yeah. Just because it just occurred to me, it was niggling at the back of my mind for a few days. There's a thing called nonviolent communication, a system developed by a fellow named Marshall Rosenberg. He's since passed away. And it's about, really, for a Baba lover, it's about connecting to Baba within yourself by acknowledging and naming what you're feeling, and then empathizing within to what is the need that is giving rise to that feeling, a need that's being met or not being met. And it's a wonderful, that's just a surface little summary of something that's really wonderful. But in the midst of that, he has what he calls the 4 life alienating reactions. And these masquerade as being feelings, but they are actually distorted reactions coming straight out of ego consciousness. And I remember them by something my daughter, who was a teenager at the time, would say, "Don't get gassed, Dad. Like, don't get so full of yourself." And it's GASD, guilt, anger, shame, and depression. And the only way, and this is, of course, dealing with yourself, with Baba in yourself, but also with others. And you can reach anyone through empathy for their feelings and intuiting their needs, including yourself, but not when there's guilt, anger, shame, or depression in place. And the only way to get to that, the feelings are not really there because it's masqueraded feeling, is to really try to tune in on what is the need, what is the real need in me that is giving rise to this reaction that alienates life, pushes life away. And if you can connect with the need and really honor it, bring it up and honor it, the guilt goes, the anger goes, the shame goes, the depression goes. It's powerful and wonderful thing to experience. So shame is I don't, gives me the creeps, you know. It's like one of those things that you're not listening to your heart, you know. You're not, and you're listening to your mind perverted by desire and ego motives of separation and alienation. So I guess one thing is just to put that out there. What's the name of his book? If I remember it later, I'll put it in the notes. His one basic book is just marvelous. I dropped you a note when I read your letter, saying that the solution might be time travel. And what I couldn't explain it, but what occurred to me at that time was that, you know, shame often has its roots in childhood stuff. All of those things often have their roots in childhood stuff. And there is a psychological technique that sometimes can be used, that people can sometimes use, that when you're going through, where you're remembering something in your childhood that was twisting and distorting and horrible or whatever, the biggest problem with it was there was no adult there to validate what you were feeling and experiencing and all of that. And so you can actually imagine your current self with all that you know now, being present with your younger self and sharing what you know and comforting your younger self and being the witness. I got to put gallery because I'm somehow okay. And comforting your younger self. Well, what occurred to me when I read your note was it could also work the other way. Because some of these issues I have been through and I kind of feel at peace with now. And it occurred to me that you could also, because time is meaningless, it's not linear at all. We experience it as linear, but we've already been in our next lifetime and we're already have the experience of our past life. That it occurred to me that we could just time travel and in our consciousness imagine our self 10, 20, 30 years, whenever we've gotten past this issue, and to listen for what that future self has to say about how to deal with what we're going through now. That may be really way out there, but it struck me as both true and funny. So I wanted to share those two things.
Oh, that's so, I'm glad you brought up a number of points in there, because the voice of the inner critic, I think a lot of us do it, you know, whether it's the voice of one of our parents or someone or whatever, but I know for myself, Baba is very critical in my experience of him. And that's how I know that I've gotten away from who Baba really is. And I think, you know, you talk to people about their relationship with Baba and I'm like, I should do this. And I think as soon as that word should comes in, or this should really, that's your sign that you've really gone off track. And I like how you said shame kind of gives you the heebie-jeebies, because that it really is that emotion. It's the sign that you've left the heart, and the heart just knows what to do. And as soon as that should, and you're questioning it, that's when you've lost that connection and it's time to recenter it. There's somebody who always says this to me, you know, Baba's like the main interstate, right? And sometimes you get off at the wrong exit. But as soon as you realize that you're off the interstate, get straight back on it. Do everything you can to get back on it. But yeah, thanks for sharing that, Tony. All right. Who do we got next?
I see Jeff has his hand up. Jeff?
Well, I got a couple of things to mention. There's the expression, you don't want to should all over yourself. And it's one of the most common things here at the center. People feeling unworthy or ashamed of what they've done. And I've always kind of felt, and in my early years, I had to deal with that. I had to actually take my ideals. I mean, you have the ideal of patience, say. And that ideal of patience is way higher than what we're capable of. So I've always felt I got to, what is my next step toward patience, toward controlling my anger, rather than, be anger free. What is my next step? Because as long as you're kind of trying to live up to ideals, you're going to be miserable, unless it's just the next step that's within your reach to do. You follow what I mean? So I had to kind of slow it way down and just find the what I was capable of. But over time, I found this is my own experience, that self-acceptance I found was closer to what I was trying to, it was closer to Baba than self-improvement. Self-improvement is endless. You can always be more patient. You can always be more generous. You can always be more this or that. But, where am I at now? And I find if I accept myself as I am now, my being relaxes, and actually love can kind of flow. I don't have that tension of who I am and where I want to be. That tension creates a tension over the heart. And I find if I can accept myself, then I don't have that inner tension, and so love kind of percolates out, you might say, not in any great gushing form, but now here's another thing. You use the term shame. Shame is actually not an emotion, as I see it. It's a criticalness. I mean, it's an attitude. It's a belief about myself. I mean, guilt is one thing, but shame is when you have the guilt, and then on top of that, you call yourself a bad person. It's not. But anyway, now here's what I did with my, and then I'll kind of shut up. But one of the things I had to do, I mean, I've done things in my past that every time I think about it, in the past, I would like cringe. Oh my God, I did that, especially in my college days. Oh, how embarrassing, just, and what I had to do is, what Baba taught me is, when those memories come up that I'm not, you might say I'm ashamed of, but I mean, I feel guilty of or remorse for, I would send love to that memory in Baba's name. And I've just done that over the last 50 years. So I changed my entire relationship with my past, and it's not like I went in there with psychoanalysis and went through all of the things I cringe when I think about. They get triggered off in the course of a day, and I just send Baba's name and love to that memory, so that I'm not reliving that memory, and that memory is just imprinting itself all the more on my consciousness. So that's a thing that I've done. And if I have guilt or remorse, to feel it in the present and not go energetically back in the past. I don't know. In other words, I can stay in the present with it rather than going into the past. I feel the remorse now, I can give that to Baba and stay in the present rather than going energetically in the past and throwing myself into time and space. Stay in the present. So anyway, those are a couple of things that occurred to me.
Yeah, beautiful, Jeff.
Yeah.
I was actually going to call on you because you said something, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, but I was maybe my last trip to Myrtle Beach, but you were just talking about how you had such an interesting relationship with doing the right thing and doing the good thing. And now through years of Baba sort of breaking that down in you, you've gotten to a place of just doing things that love spontaneously brings up for you. And would you be willing to kind of, because that's kind of the idea that I was wanting to say.
Yeah, there's a quote from Victor Hugo, the French novelist, where he says, virtue, as in the case of vice, is a calculated action. Or you could say good, as in the case of bad, is a calculated action. But love is not calculated. It wells up in the heart and expresses itself spontaneously. But it's hard to wait and let love be the one that does the prompting. You can always just reach on the shelf and do something good, but it's got a motive behind it, whereas love it kind of wells up and just expresses itself spontaneously. So that is what I found. I mean, it's hard to be patient enough and wait to weigh in and see what love wants to do in a situation instead of just reaching for good.
Yeah.
So it's hard to restrain ourselves from doing good all the time. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, this kind of phrase keeps coming to me of like, love has no law. And that's really where, we as humans and, having this mind, we want something we can stick to, we can stick by, we can hold on to, that, oh, this is it. Like, I'm being a good Baba lover. I'm, like you said, being good. Oh, and that
Yeah.
makes me loving. Like, we want that checklist, but love often does things that, are for our own benefit or painful or feel different. Or I had this experience maybe about a year ago, but I just felt that just so ashamed of myself that I'd spent so long like living in these patterns of whatever I was living in. And Baba was sort of, through a lot of painful experience, was unveiling to me how I've been living in these patterns. And I was so angry because I was like, you all along could have just broken this. Like, why did you wait until I was 24 to have me see this? You could have done this when I was 18. You could have done this when I was 20. Why and I was so angry. And I heard Baba say inwardly to me, he said, because I needed those patterns.
yeah.
And as soon as he didn't need those, he broke them. And that's, I think, was like the hard thing for us. We want to get to this point, this finish line, but we don't really want to run the race. And the race involves losing all of these things one by one. And you can't take off your undershirt if you haven't taken off your coat yet.
Yeah.
And you have to slowly take it off. And Baba knows the perfect timing to do it in.
And if a lot of these things that we wish we hadn't done, if we hadn't done them, we wouldn't have much empathy. There's a Zen phrase, fish cannot live in pure water. Need a little, grime in there. I mean, if you really, Baba, I found in my own life, Baba's turned all my selfishness and errant behavior into empathy for others, rather than into a bad self-image or low self-esteem.
Yeah.
So so a lot of these things have a value that we don't like, but later on they prove to be, enable you to connect with somebody because you have done that very thing. It's
I have one more thing. One more story, if you'd be willing to share, Jeff,
Yeah.
and then we'll get to Tony. And I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but I just remember you telling me the story about how you had this thing that was bothering you for all these years, and you were bringing it to Eric and being like, I just can't shake this. And finally, Eric said something to you. Would you just share that story? Because I think that just sums up empathy and shame and all of that so beautifully.
Yeah, I did something, this is back in the 70s. And from it, I had such a psychic reaction that it just kind of numbed my head. I felt like the after effect was like I was wearing a football helmet all day. I mean, and I went to the lagoon cabin. I went to India to try to shake this thing. I could not, do it. It just, something really backfired. I had done a wrong thing, you might say. In fact, on my second trip, it was still hanging in there, and I said to Erich, you know, should I'm willing to share what I did and all of that, if, you know, if that would help. I said, no, don't do that. You know, but I was sitting in Mandalay Hall with him, and everybody kind of cleared out, and we were leaning up against the wall, and I said, Erich, why did this have to happen? This has screwed up my life. It has put this weird sensation that I have to live with. Why did this have to happen? And Erich says, but you've grown. And I say, I've grown. What do you base that upon? And he looked over at me and kind of with endearing way says, now you can't hold your head so high. And I knew it. And actually it lifted. It lifted by the end of that trip. Now you can't hold your head so high, you know. So sometimes these things happen to bring us down. So we are humbled. And my empathy today, much of it came from that. You know, from having done wrong, so to speak. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
I mean, I didn't do the terrible things that Tony Paternetti has done, but you know. No.
Yes.
Your talking stick is being taken away.
Nobody's that bad.
All right. Okay. Next.
How about Shri? I see your hands up, Shri. Good evening. Oh, you want to click on mute? I think Samantha got muted. There you go.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I just wanted, so Tony, what you mentioned about the impact of your childhood on how you view shame resonated with me, at least, because so I wasn't born into a Baba family. I was born into a pretty like Orthodox Hindu family. And I think a lot of times, and this is always so weird for me still thinking back, because I grew up loving Krishna, but my relationship with Krishna nowadays through Baba is much different than the one that I had as a child. But I think a lot of times when you grow up in like certain Orthodox environments, you're taught to fear God more than love him. And I think that a lot of that shame that you can feel growing up is really like fueled by that fear. And I think it took me a while to realize like you feel shameful because you're trying to hide whatever it is away from God because you're scared of him. And I think for me personally, it was a big breakthrough to realize like that is literally the only person that you should not be scared of, because it's the only person who will ever accept you as you are, because you are him and he is you. And I think for a really long time, and I still like, I mean, all of us still struggle with it today, or else we wouldn't be talking about it right now. But I think so often, like, you're taught all these different things, I feel like sometimes, and like, this is right, this is wrong, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do, and you feel like sometimes you're just doing a really crappy job at being a good person. And I think at the end of the day, you just have to realize like you have one true companion in this world, and that's him, and you can go to him with everything and realize like the second that you stop, so to speak, like hiding things from him, but rather just like keeping that internal dialogue going instead, and rather like be upfront about it. And then the way that I've always processed it is like kind of like talk it out in my head with him, so to speak, and just be super transparent and upfront about it, rather than like trying to hide away from it or like resorting to other coping mechanisms to kind of like forget about it. I think that's like been a big realization for me in my life. And I think especially like when you go to college and when you're in like your early 20s, you do a lot of like stupid things that you probably don't want to do again. And I think having that realization really helped me throughout college. And now as I'm in my early 20s.
Wow, so beautifully said. And yeah, it's so insightful. That's the truth. It's really the person that, or the thing that you should have the least amount of shame with is God. And I think that's it. God is it's like it's hardest to be honest with yourself, and being honest with God is being honest with yourself. So you have to accept, like Jeff said, that complete self-acceptance and the fact that you're like, well, yeah, that's the truth. That's so incredible. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
Yeah, very well said. Really beautiful.
And Tony, did you have anything else?
Yes. I just noted 4 things. One, in my early, not in my first year with Baba, which was wonderful, but in the next like 8 years, I was in a context where I was really striving to please Baba, to serve Baba, to do what Baba would want, which was and not my ego, but my ego was really Baba in me. I was calling it my ego, and I was suppressing Baba in me. And it was a horrible, horrible way to go about things. Talk about getting everything wrong. But Baba was there with me through the whole thing. And when I was finally freed myself of that with his immense help, at some point I wrote a song, and I'll just sing, like, I guess the one verse of it. Sometimes you gotta stand up for what's wrong. Sometimes you gotta stand up for what's wrong. Sometimes you gotta stand up for what's wrong. Sometimes you gotta be willing to just sing your song. Sometimes you gotta stand up for what's wrong. Sometimes, and other verses on that line. And I think it was it was the truth I needed at that moment. The second thing that came to mind was you used the phrase wanting to do the right thing in a negative sense, but I have found that do the right thing can be a very powerful, very truing affirmation. I'm in a situation and it's like, I can do this, or is there what's the right thing to do in this situation? What means to me, what does my inner self say is the right thing to do in this situation? So I find that really helpful. A story, the third, I have 4 things that I wrote down. The third is a story that some of you may know and some may not, but it had a massive impact on me. There was this fellow who was constantly sending these messages, these long missives, long letters to Baba, bewailing all of his failings and how many times he falls to temptation and how much he struggles, and no matter what, he's so full of these weaknesses and shortcomings. And after a ream of these letters arriving at Mandalay Hall, Baba said, there's another note from so-and-so, and he's singing, and Baba he's saying such and such, and Baba dictated, tell that fool it is my will. It took about 10 years or more to really let that sink in. Where Baba says, whatever situation you find yourself in, think honestly and sincerely, Baba has placed me in this situation. And there's a Course in Miracles lesson that I was just happened to be reviewing yesterday. There is no will but God's. So when we think we're in conflict with God, it's meaningless, because what Baba wants for us and what we really want are the same thing. And even like my daughter not talking to me now for a couple of years, 2 years, and who the hell knows why, I had the clarity that I share Baba's will. This is exactly the way this is supposed to be. All right, so the fourth thing, though, getting back to what I said about don't get gassed, Dad. That's how I remember it. Greek, guilt, anger, shame, depression. The solution is always in honoring the need underneath what the mental craziness is about, or the acting out is about. And it could be you or it could be someone else, you know. And then after really honoring and saying, yeah, this is what I need. I need this. I don't need it in this form or that form, but I need friendship. I need integrity. I need courage, whatever the quality that is underneath this. Then look for strategies to meet that need. You know, once you have totally gotten connected with yourself on this deep need, then you can look at, well, will this strategy work? Will this form work? Will this meet the need? You know, and you check in with Baba. What's the right thing here? So that's all. Thank you.
Beautiful. I think this is kind of in the same spirit of that, but you know, you can want what you want, or you can want what he wants. And often what he wants is not the harder thing. That's sort of what I found in my own life, is we always want to choose. Well, sometimes we want to cop out. We want the easier thing. That's a different story. But there are a lot of times in life where we want to do the harder thing because it'll make us feel good. It's like, oh, I did this hard thing because this is what Baba wants. But ultimately, like, we are Baba, and those longings and that, you know, let's say we have a good feeling about something working out in life, or, you know, whatever, that's him. That happiness that we're feeling is his happiness. And it's like a signal. Baba gives us these signals to put us where we need to be. The suffering is going to come inevitably. He's going to make that happen. And my last India trip, this phrase kept coming up in this story of Erich, saying how Erich would tell people not to get addicted to suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I think we want to pretend that what Baba wants is all us to have all this suffering. And really we're ignoring, I mean, you kind of said it perfectly, Tony, like our needs and that longing that we have inside to ultimately be happy. But we're like, no, Baba wants me to be unhappy. So I'm going to choose the harder thing rather than this beauty that Baba's laying out for me. And we feel shame in wanting to go towards that, even though that longing is from him. It's in us. He's gonna do the hard work inevitably. Like shit's gonna hit the fan at some point with him. But we don't have to go out and seek that. Like, we can be okay with Baba wanting us to even have that happiness and joy.
But it's only going to hit the fan if it's something that we need to learn.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, the reason I was in that situation where I was all in my head about serving Baba, well, my heart had experienced something that I was unwilling to accept. And I just pushed it down, and without my heart to really guide me, my head knew exactly what Baba wanted.
Your head is kind of like that teenager that you have to tell it to get out before it forgets everything, you know?
And the other thing is, there's no patent rule about any of this, because Baba is so independent that the way he works with you or me or anyone in a particular situation could be totally different tomorrow. It's whatever the need is in that moment. Baba is perfect in wanting us to come into our fullness and our love. So our will really is the same as his in that, but we think our want is our will, and we get the lesson then.
All right, looks like we got Marion next.
Hi, thank you everyone for your sharing. I wasn't quite sure what my focus needs to be for my own expression, as I could spend, as most anyone could, hours and hours and days going over my transformation in this life. I think what I would like to share is more where I am now, because I identify with all the processes everyone's talking about. And what you shared, Tony, about nonviolent communication, that's been at the core of my transformation, of practicing that and connecting with, and I use that, I've gone through the discourses underlying everything Baba has said about wants. Like he said, I will not fulfill any of your wants, but I'll fulfill every need. And so I've really studied that in the discourses, underlined everything. And he even emphasizes, it's not easy to dig that out. where the wants are and what the real needs are. And I thought that's where nonviolent communication has been so enlightening, because so I've done long sheets of wants. I've gotten just outrageous with every want I could ever think of. And a lot of them are material wants. And then did the inner work to put an equal sign what the real need is. Then I can ask the question in with Baba, what support do I need to fulfill this need? And I am also mindful of the language that I use, because when I'm going around my apartment here in New York City, and the difference between saying, oh, I'm so tired, and oh, I'm really aggravated today, and I have a little saying in my wallet, whatever comes after I am is going to follow you around and tug at you all day. So I'll get that little twinge in my temple to change the language, because language is vibration, vibrates through the whole energy system. And I'll change it to, I feel tired. I feel really discouraged. So I'm grateful for having what I call the contrast, and what someone else just mentioned, I think you did, Jeff, when you fall off, I call it fall off the wagon. I have all these tools in my toolbox to get back on as fast as I can. And then this one wise teacher said, in the world of duality, you have to fall off. Oh, okay, that helped me. Not to judge myself for falling off, but report it to Baba. Oh, I notice I'm off again. I'm in my ego. I'm trying to do everything myself. And then I have the tools in my toolbox, whether it's meditation, whether it's expressing my lower self in a healthy way, whether it's stomping up and down or whatever helps me in my toolbox get back centered. And then this wise teacher said, you have to fall off, so that when you get back on, it's with a momentum that takes you out into the void where you've never created before. It's like an arrow being shot into the void. So you have to fall off. And then with great sense of humor said, see if you can keep it to 10%. And everyone in our low course laughed, like, if I've noticed I'm, doing it 90% of my day now, see if I can keep it to 10%. So that keeps with my tools of expressing my lower self. And also with my professional training came using the triad nature. Baba talks about knowledge, power, bliss being the triad nature. And then what I've learned is on the defense level, that when we're little children, we create our defenses to make ourselves safe, is reason, will, and emotion. That's the distortion of knowledge, power, bliss. And so I've learned to find out what is my dominant characteristic. I have all three, but mine is emotion. And that means I have that lens of when I'm emotionally reacting, I have to balance with thinking. And so it's been helpful that I've had some good help and teachers and concepts to help me with my own personality main defense. And it's helped me professionally too, because I look through those lenses of energetically, what is a person's main defense? Is it reason, will, or emotion? Because then that'll be a gateway to the higher self of knowledge, power, bliss. And so with that, I'm grateful for all the tools. Now I'm going to wind it up with, here I've done all this transformation for so many decades. And now what am I dealing with? And I know Baba revealed that to me, is releasing all deep karmic attachments with anybody here in this lifetime that I have very, very strong karmic attachments with, and to detach. And I've already done it. My parents are long gone, but I've already had the experience of totally detaching with those two souls of any karmic exchange. Again, it's finished, over, done with. And then it came to me a few years ago after that, I have 2 children and 4 grandchildren, 4 grandsons. Talk about because expectations are what reveal where the attachments are, where I have expectations that they are not responsible for, where I'm looking to them as my source. So I'm and I call it being dragged through that for years now. And Baba fortunately gives me a glimpse of when there's more and more detachment, but it comes through the pain of first experiencing the attachment before I can possibly let it go. And that draws me close to Baba. And I have also, in what I've learned, I don't go through any of that with, as a metaphor, the hand of God, the hand of Baba. It cannot be done alone. So it draws me, all of these challenge that I have draws me to Baba. So I'm so grateful when I have, when I can sit up and not complain. But I have some complaint sessions every day with Baba, because I am that emotion type person, and and Baba smiles. When I get out of all my complaints, turn them over to Baba, I feel like there's a smile on the photograph I use to focus on, like, great, because that's the other side of the coin of being submissive, the good girl, all that, is to be the bad girl, complain and get it out. And then I come to balance. So I'll end with that, because that's just doing my best to kind of share some of my process, because it's so, I'm so grateful for everything that, all the ways that I'm helped, yes, to be in the moment. Yeah.
So beautifully said. I also think that, especially that last point you made about you let yourself be, that bad girl or whatever. And then what you do is you create, you start to, for your own sake. I mean, Baba already accepts you as you are, but you start to prove to yourself that Baba's accepting you as you are. And then if Baba can accept you as you are, like, Baba's not going anywhere if you complain and do that.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, really,
Because
really.
I need her, and I separate the out, because sometimes I acted out. I've done a lot of psychodrama, and I was theater major in school and all that. So I love acting out my human and divine, and my human. So she's always defiant, and she's always resistant, and she always sticks out her tongue and says, "Nah, I'm not doing that." And so I love going, back and forth between. And so what's happened is it aligns with the NVC work of empathy, having empathy for human Marion, rather than putting her down in any way. So when I'm in the world of duality, there's self and other. In a unitive state, it's all one, of course, but I have to go through self and other before I merge totally into the unitive state with Baba. So I like her. I mean, I don't let her run the show, but I need her energy, so I listen to her. I call her mean, nasty Marion. Yeah.
Thank you, Marion.
All right, and Shri.
So this is more so like a question for anyone who feels like answering, but Baba says one of the best ways to love him is by loving other people. And in most environments, like, great, but obviously we all have those people in our lives, like, that we just can't stand, to be very blunt. And I often find that, like, a lot of the shame that I feel is when I get, like, really irritated by those people, or even, like, lose my temper sometimes, even if it's internally, because then I'm in my head, it's this battle of, well, this person just really irritates the crap out of me, but how am I getting irritated by someone who's also Baba? And then how am I supposed to tell him that he's irritating me? And then that just makes you feel horrible and very shameful and all of that. So I was just curious if anyone else goes through something similar, and if you do, how do you kind of process it internally?
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. I think everybody goes through that. I think that's like, that's where a big source of shame is like, oh, why do I hate this person even though I'm supposed to love them? Or why do I find this person so annoying? But from my own experience, working with the idea of the provisional ego is really helpful. And not just that Baba's experiencing the annoyance, but that the other person is having the same experience. And so, like, let's say this used to happen with my ex. He would do something that was really, really annoying. And I would just be like, I would look at him as Baba, and I would be like, Baba, I would get really nasty. Excuse my French, but I'd be like, Baba, that is so fucking stupid that you're doing that right now. And what it gave me the ability to do was separate my ex, from what he was doing, because it was no longer Steve doing it. It was Baba in him doing it. And then I could take it out on Baba. And then my heart still felt the love and the connection to him as the person, but I could deal with it as Baba, because it was like that. it's Baba who's doing that through that person. So I don't have to have any negative feelings towards them. I can put all those negative feelings on Baba and I can hash that out with them, which might mean, you know, boundaries. I need to create space. Like, you know, I would remove myself from that situation and hash it out with Baba however I needed to, you know, whatever, like Marion said, the tools, maybe write it out, punch a pillow, cry it out, whatever, but have that experience with Baba rather than with the person that I thought was doing it to me. I don't know if that's helpful at all.
Yeah, that is. I've actually never thought about it like that. So that was very helpful.
All right, looks like we got Jeff's hand up.
Yeah, no, that's excellent to get the reaction separate, independent of the person. You know, there's a neat thing. There's a story. There was a woman named Agnes Barron who lived on Mehermount. Baba called him I think he called her his watchdog. And she had a very prickly personality. I mean, a lot of people encountered it. A bit on the abrasive side. And Baba came there in 1956, and she was driving him from Mehermount back to LA. And on the way, she said, you know, Baba, people just, there's some people that just don't like me. And Baba turns in the car and says, but I like you. Which is, wow, hey. But then when she got to LA, she had a conflict with Ivy Deuce, who was the head of the Sufis. And she was, I mean, she really just didn't like Ivy Deuce. And, so when she was there with Baba, Ivy wasn't there. She said, Baba, so you say we should love everybody. I don't love everybody. What are you going to do about that? She's kind of, what are you going to do about that? And Baba said, Agnes, you love everybody, you just don't like everybody. In other words, she would give the shirt off her back for anybody, but you know, her emotional reaction is independent of her love. In other words, if that person had to go to the hospital and everything, you take them. Even if you can't stand them, your sanskaras, you know, react to their sanskaras. Like, in other words, if I'm into rap music, if the sanskaras, my sanskaras are in tune with rap music, and your sanskaras have been brought up with classical music, our sanskaras, when they get together, are not going to, you know, they're not going to harmonize. But that's just like, you know, your clothes, what you're wearing right now may clash with what I'm wearing. But that's actually on a very superficial level compared to the realm of love. That, I mean, that's one thing. Then there are two quotes I got that I like. This one of Mara's favorite quotes was from Baba. It was, seeds germinate in soft soil. I plant my seed of love not in your strengths, but your weaknesses. Seeds germinate in soft soil. I plant my seed of love, not in your strengths, but your weaknesses. And then one thing that Mani said, you know, there next to Bob almost her entire life, she said, I prayed to you for strength to carry out your work. You gave me weakness, so I would depend on you. So a lot of these weaknesses, we don't like them, but they do make us think of Baba. I mean, you know, if everything is going nicely, you know, and you're kind of floating along and having a pleasant day, and then a tree limb hits you on the head, you know, you shout out at Baba. I mean, you are really remembering Baba in that moment. And these things happen, you know, it breaks up our kind of nice, Baba said, I mean, Bao Kaur used to say, sometimes it takes a nightmare to wake you up from a pleasant dream. So that's unfortunate that that's woven into the fabric of the universe. Anyway,
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, Rich.
One of the things I miss about not living near the center is listening so intently to Jeff, because every time I've ever heard Jeff talk, these little nuggets of wisdom are falling from the M&M tree, you know, like what stuff. But I wanted to criticize Tony. That's what I don't have opportunities to do that much. I wanted to say, I want him to comment on effort and grace. Oh, sorry, Tony. Okay, never mind. Little joke there. But you know, I don't know how to contribute to this conversation because you guys are really on it, you know, and I'm getting old, and I still haven't seen the parts of me that are so difficult, but only other people seem to be able to really reflect those to me. So unfortunately, well, I guess I've got to the point where now I'm almost trying to listen to what other people are telling me, but it's not really other people so much as it is maybe Bob is saying, wake up, do you see this? This is a problem. Or, you know, you've got to get through this. And you always have to become aware of everything before it's going to go away. If you don't like it, even if you like it, it'll probably go away. Once you're aware of how great a tennis player you are, you've got to play trombone, you know, just, I guess that's like, but, but in the meantime, I'm going through a situation right now that I really didn't see coming. And I know that Baba brought it. And he's allowing me to contend with it. And I don't know if accepted is the right word, but also to kind of see it for what it is. The last thing I want to comment on is I'm a really empathetic person. I mean, I think I'm almost psychic. I don't want to be a braggart about it, but I mean, I can just pull the vibes out of stuff, you know, and then my mind will start going there, and people don't like that. That's a very difficult thing for me to observe boundaries. And I'm not really being very coherent or cogent with all this stuff, but this is interesting stuff. This is group therapy for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
So just play dumb once in a while too. Play dumb sometimes.
So I just opened to this quote, and this jumped out at me, and it came to mind. It's in this book called You and I, and it's sort of something about like the topic. It says, by thinking continually, you become what you think of deeply. The mind makes one become what one thinks of deeply. And like, yeah, I mean, it's like almost like retraining the mind to think of other stuff and like focus on like Baba and like know like the like illusion stuff we think of like isn't real, but it's real to us. Like easier said than done. All right, Tony.
Hey, so about sounding off at Baba. Back in 93, based on something I heard Don Stevens say at a gathering in Hungary, I came back to New York and I put my love life in Baba's hands. Specifically, I said, you see what's in my heart. You see what my needs are. Better than I know. I said, you pick her, no conditions. And, but I put my love life in his hands. And it's a great story, which I won't tell, but he clearly created this relationship. And it was absolutely clear it was the response to my saying, I put my love life in your hands. And so I was all in, and it was wonderful in the beginning, but suddenly it got really kind of, there were things coming up and that alarmed me. And I was saying, Baba, maybe I should get out. Maybe this is not what you want. And I would get it so clearly, love her more. Love her more. And so I continuously approached the situation like that. And things got crazier and crazier. And I would talk to Baba in the car driving to work. And I would like lay it all out there. And Baba, she's doing this. Wouldn't it be better if I just, because look at this and this and that. Love her more. Well, finally, she bolted. And I was a friggin' mess because I had loved so completely that somewhere before the end of the relationship, something happened that opened up everything I had repressed in my life since I was 9 when my father died. So I had transformed, and now the person who was instrumental in that was disappearing, and I grappled with it. But there was one issue in particular. It was clear to me, whether it was true or not, I think it was, that she wanted for us to have a baby by accident. And I wanted us, if we had a baby, to consciously, intentionally, in the context of a committed relationship, and that was just one of the big issues at the time. Months pass. I hear she has now met this guy and she's pregnant, and she was dead against having a baby, dead against having a. Well, I was so angry at Baba, and you put me in this, you pushed me to love her more, and now I said, look, I know you're God, but I don't want to see your face. And I went around my apartment. You see how many Baba pictures I've got, like everywhere, right? Even more than that. I went around, I took every picture. And I spilled my wine. I took every picture off the wall. I took the pictures that were on the counter and I turned them face down. And I said, and then I made sure I got every last one in the apartment. And I said, good, okay, you're God, but I don't have to. I'm like really pissed off. It happened to be that night Bauji was coming to speak at Mayor Baba House in New York, which met at the Christ Church a block away from the Delmonico where Baba had stayed when he was in New York. And of course I wanted to see Bao. So I went, and I have Scorpio rising. I can control my appearance. The people don't know what I'm going through. I just keep it, right? So I got there, and Bao is giving this wonderful talk, and it's a group of maybe, 30 of us. And he says, Baba loves you so much. He forgives you everything. No matter what you do, Baba loves you so much that he forgives it all. He said, you can go around your apartment, take down all of his pictures from the wall, turn them all over, and turn your face from him, and still he forgives you. I hadn't told anyone. I had not told him. I went back home and I very sheepishly picked up all the pictures and put them back on the wall. So Baba can definitely take it if it's sincere. There was one point where I was venting on Baba relating to that same situation, and I crossed a line. I could feel it within myself that I was venting so much negativity that it could do harm to me, to this woman, to her baby. I mean, it was really clear that Baba was saying enough. And so there are two different stories of venting. And the first one, Baba was very pleased at me letting it all out. The other one, to a point, and then he said, don't go in, don't own it. Don't own it. Let it go, give it to me. And I did. So I could have let it end on the happy note, but the other piece is there, and it's also Baba. So
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
All right, Marion.
Hi, I just want to say this very brief thing because I had in sharing what I shared that it's very important to, and I'm not giving any advice to anyone else because everybody's got to find their own way, but there is a reality about the energy body that we have these 7 bodies that interpenetrate each other, and that the emotion body, emotions are not feelings, they're reactions. Back and forth between two aspects of duality. That's what an emotion is. And they do not transform unless expressed. So everybody does it differently. Some could write a letter, and throw it away, tear it up and throw it away. Mine, since I'm very emotional, I have to get out my hitting bat and look at Baba's picture and say, so-and-so triggered something in me. I own it. Nobody causes anything in me. But I'll say, so-and-so triggered this in me, and now I'm going to release it, so that I am filled with your light, love, and life. I call it the 3 L's with Baba. So I'm filled with your light, love, and life. I'm now going to release out of my energy body what has been stored there and triggered by so-and-so. And then I let it rip. because I'm used to doing that. I'm so highly emotional. But somebody who's more the thinker type's not going to do what I do. So it's finding one's own way, and the strong will type is going to need to do it a different way. But it is very vital and essential to release from the emotion body the emotions, because it will not transform without being brought out and released. So I just want to drop that in the basket, and everybody has to find their own way how to do that. But the other thing, a charming thing, I was sitting here in this room yesterday, working with my checkbook and trying to get everything in order and my finances, and I was feeling a little nervous. And I keep in my checkbook a picture of Baba on a card that says, "Don't worry, be happy." So while I was doing this, I had the TV running just to keep me company. And at the very same time, there was one of those shows where they write on a board in a few words, and people are supposed to guess what the song is. You know, that one where, you know, they have it up there, and then the contestants are trying to see who can first figure out what the song was. Well, the song was "Don't Worry, Be Happy."
Oh, oh, so great.
At the very same moment. So I just had to share that, because when Baba does that, you know, I feel the grace. I'm so happy. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
I think I shared this last week. I can't remember though, but I had this beautiful experience. Shame was like really a theme. Shame and guilt were kind of like this theme of my India trip that was really being brought up. And I had this dream of Mara that I was sleeping in my dream, or like laying on my bed in my dream, and Mara was sitting on the edge of my bed, and she's kind of like stroking my hair like a mother would as I'm falling asleep. And then all of a sudden I start having these terrible thoughts that I was like, the worst thought. You wouldn't want to have these in the presence of the purest soul in the universe. And so in the dream, I try to like push her away. It's like, I don't want her to know that this is happening, but I'm turning my head and I'm so ashamed. And in the dream, she takes my head and holds it almost like a little bunny rabbit or something, and puts it on her lap and just strokes my head until I fall asleep. And so I told this dream to Rafty Argenio, who was there, and he said, "Margi, you're giving yourself way too much credit. Would you be ashamed to bring your dirty hands to a bar of soap?" And when he said that, I was like, wow, we're so ashamed to bring all this to Baba or to bring all this to Mara, but I don't think twice when I go to wash my hands at the sink if they're dirty. Like that, he and she are the eternal sink. They just keep washing it. There's nothing that can dirty the ocean.
You know, I've shared this before, but in other places, but back in the 70s when I was young, and I said to Eric, in Mandalay Hall, I said to Eric, you know, what if I went out last night to a party, I got drunk, had a wild time, and, you know, I knew Baba wouldn't be happy with it, but I was bound and determined to do this. And now this morning, I've got a headache, I'm hungover, I feel miserable. I said to Erich, now, I don't want to burden Baba with this. You know, that was my own choice. I did that freely, that I wanted to have that time. So I'm willing to suffer it through. Does Baba want me to give him my hangover? Now, Erich is on the other side of the Mandalay Hall there. Does Baba want me to give him my hangover? He said, yes. Give him your hangover and the embarrassment of having such a meager gift to give your beloved will inspire you next time to have something more precious to offer him. But always give whatever you're feeling deep down to Baba. But I said, Erich, still, isn't that a burden to Baba? He said, brother, it's a greater burden to Baba to withhold anything from him than to throw on him the worst of yourself. And that was emblazoned on me because I asked the question. It came from Baba through Erich into my lap. You know, It is a greater burden to Baba to withhold anything from him than to throw on him the worst of yourself. So he's got the good, bad, and ugly of me my whole life. From there on, I didn't hold anything back.
Yes, I just want to say, because the worst in you is the gateway to the best in you. Always. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's when you love somebody, really, especially the divine, a divine being, you give them, share everything. What is love if you don't share all of you? You hold some stuff back. I mean, we do that with each other. The other thing that I'm reminded of, there was a saint of India named Ramana Maharshi, six-plane saint. And he was asked, what should our relationship be with others? And he, in a very, he was really kind of classic holy man. What should our relationship be with others? And he looked up and said, there are no others. It's Baba, Baba's using every one of us with each other like hand puppets. We think, oh, that person did that to me, but it's our beloved doing that to us through that person. For the longest time, I couldn't imagine Baba would treat me the way some of these people had treated me in my life. But it was Baba through them and not them doing it. It took me 40 years for that to penetrate. Yeah. Anyway.
Wow. Well, if no one has anything else for tonight, I think that's a good way to end.
I think Marion should go over to Tony's and beat him over the head with that bat that she's got.
I beg your pardon. If you're talking about Richie's complaint, this is the kind of meeting I thrive on. Even before I knew of Baba, this is the kind of meeting I thrive on, where people share, and it spontaneously makes me want to share something based on that. I don't do good with comment. I don't feel inspired when commenting on a book. So that's why I've attended Effort and Grace, but I keep to myself because nothing is inspired in me to share. Otherwise, I'd go to share.
Yeah.
I just like poking somebody when,
I know, poor Tony. I feel like it's become this running joke with him where he's like, he has to be on the defense all the time. He made one comment one time and now
he's had it now. When we lower him in the grave, we're going to say Effort and Grace.
I know, we should have.
We're going to throw the book. We're going to throw the book in there with it.
Except I'll be somewhere else. No, I love the book, but
no, we need to have
books, I read them with Baba alone and engage in the exchange that comes from it. The people, I like to hear their struggles, share my struggles, and I learn something that you can't get at the book.
No, this is great. This is what a lot of the experience on the center is. Sharing, how we deal with these challenges and what breakthroughs we might get and all that. It's fantastic. Hey, I just want to ask one quick. Shri, where do you live?
I live in Atlanta.
Oh, okay. You're in Atlanta. Okay. I was needed to kind of get your coordinates somehow.
Yeah, my brother's still back in Jersey though.
Okay.
Your brother, oh God, what's his name? It's escaping. Hari. Yes, I was gonna say maybe that wasn't right. Okay, it's all coming together.
I have one quote to close it out. Let's go randomly to this. I am like the ocean you see before you, always ready to receive anything, good or bad. All your thoughts, feelings, all and everything, lay them at my feet and be free.
Yeah.
Well, let's have a moment of silence. and then we'll unmute and we'll do, or we can stay muted, whatever you guys want to do. 3 Avatar Mer Baba PJs. All right. Avatar, Meher
Avatar,
Baba.
Avatar,
Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Jai Baba, guys. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
Jai
Thank you.
Baba Dinku.